Thank you so much. Remember just on the last stream, I mentioned that I was going to go through the book of Daniel with the understanding of the Islamic conquests of the Middle East, Jerusalem, this whole part of the world. What I wanted to do was share with you some information that I found interesting when we're looking at the prophecies mentioned in the book of Daniel, specifically in the book of Daniel. If you could please share this. I was having problems again sharing it in some groups on Facebook. I don't know if it's due to Facebook restriction again. I don't know, but I'd like us to see if you can get some new viewers to check this out. So, one moment. Oh, I'm so sorry. I do this every time. Thank you to my moderators. Thank you for your help. I appreciate you guys being here. Friends, so the image that I've got in front of you is a map. It's an old map, but it's about the 4 caliphs in Islam, the Caliphates, the kingdom of Islam, you could say. I thought I'd bring this map up on the screen because, as you can see, it's divided into 4 regions, 4 sections. What I wanted to do is talk about the prophecies mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Daniel. Should we begin there first? I think so. So, in the book of Daniel, let's start with chapter 7. Let me just check if I've got the... Hold on one moment, friends. Thank you for your patience. I'm just waiting. Just checking to see I had that up there. Okay. All right. In the book of Daniel, the thing is, what I wanted to do is to take another look at the prophecies mentioned in the book of Daniel with the understanding of what took place in history when it comes to Islam. Does the book of Daniel talk about it? Has the book of Daniel mentioned this other empire that would come and influence the wider region in the Middle East? And friends, I think we might have missed a big part of history. Just stay with me, friends. What I'm going to do is share with you some information that I found in regards to this. And it's possible, friends, I think it's very likely that we have missed it. So, let's read from Daniel chapter 7, verse 2. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. The Grecian, right? After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So this part of the scripture I'm re-examining, and it's okay to do that, and I encourage you to do the same thing. Taking a closer look, what is the description? What's the details here? Can we take any hints away with us and compare it to what we see in the Islamic conquests of the Middle East and Israel, Jerusalem? In the next chapter in Daniel 8, where do I want us to begin from? Let us begin, because this is regarding the time of the end. In fact, in Daniel chapter 8, in verse 17, let me scroll down and show you what the angel said to Daniel. The angel said to Daniel, "Understand, Son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end." I know so many of us are looking at these prophecies. We look at Bible commentary, we look at history, and so much of it has been fulfilled. And I agree. But there's a big chunk missing that none of the other pieces seem to fit. If this portion of the prophecy is regarding the time of the end, when does the time of the end begin? At the time of the Lord Jesus Christ's appearing, because the apostles considered that to be the time of the end, the last days. So, having considered this time of the end, what happened at the time when Christian West, we could say, was conquered, Christian East was conquered by Islam? Was that showing us this beast that has been forming ever since? Because I believe what I'm seeing in the scriptures is certain phases of the beast until it forms the final part, which again I'm going to show you for those of you who are new. Let me show you this image here, which is taken from the book of Daniel chapter 2, the statue, the gold, the silver, the bronze, which corresponds to Daniel chapter 7, and with Revelation chapter 13, the lion, the bear, and the leopard. On the left of this image, you can see here the comparisons made between the ancient kingdoms and the 4 caliphs ruling from Medina in Arabia. So we're going to take a little look at this. But this portion of the statue's feet here is regarding the time of the end. Do you see why I say often that Bible prophecy is often panoramic, past, present, and future, building up to this anti-Christ beast kingdom's appearance, when that event in our history is going to arrive. So, let's go back. Hope I'm making sense. Oh my goodness. Daniel chapter 8. Let's start from, because in this portion of the scripture, the vision that Daniel sees is regarding 2 beasts, 2 particular animals. One is a goat and the other one is a ram. The prophecy, or the vision, was given to Daniel, and an angel comes to help him understand it. Because there's so much to read today, I'm trying to work out where to read from. Let's read from verse 8. Therefore the male goat I got some water with lemon today, thank you. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I think the last time someone said, drink water with some lemon. I've tried all of it, friends, even with honey. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken. And this is where people say this was Alexander the Great. And his kingdom was divided into 4, right? 4 sections of his kingdom. Verse 9. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, toward the glorious land. If I can narrow it down to even one more verse, it would be this one here, verse 9. Excuse me. And out of one of them came a little horn. This little horn is the man of sin, the Antichrist, the one that opposes Jerusalem, the Jews and the Christians, come against the daily sacrifices, even though some of this has been fulfilled. But again, it's regarding the end. Specifically the time of the end, just before the return of the Lord. So we need to pay attention to the details. Out of one of them, out of the four, came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Excuse me. Well, that lemon's not helping, is it? Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Gabriel interprets the vision. He says that it's regarding the time of the end, and he breaks it down. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is in between its eyes is the first king. Let's read from there. At the appointed time the end shall be. The ram which you saw having the two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece, which is so consistent with Daniel chapter 2. I remind you what Daniel chapter 2 saw and the order. It was the Babylonian gold, then followed the Mede and Persians in the silver, and then followed Greek, the leopard. So we see that Daniel 7, Daniel 8, when they're talking about Medo-Persia, Greek, it's talking about the same scenario. You see the consistency, it lines up, right? And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is in between its eyes is the first king. And I'm on record saying about a year ago or so that I believe Erdogan could be the first king. The large horn. Verse 22. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time, see the panoramic prophecy, in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise. Here comes the Antichrist, having fierce features who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He gets his power from the dragon, according to Revelation chapter 13. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity, but he shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. The vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told, is true. Therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. Daniel is taken sick after seeing the vision. And it overwhelms him as to what it was he saw. In Daniel chapter 11, the portion that I want us to take a look at is verse, let's see. Let's read from verse 16 then. These two, two regions, north and the south, warring kings. Again, many say this is all fulfilled until it gets to verse 36. And then from verse 36, it becomes more end time. But let us read some more. But he who comes, let me read from verse 17. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus he shall do, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or be for him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person. Can you see how one comes, imposes taxes, he's removed, and then another comes, arises in his place, and he comes in peaceably and seizes the kingdom by intrigue. And then you think, well, what kingdom? What's the kingdom spoken of here? Is it in Israel? I'm thinking out loud with you. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him and be broken. And also the prince of the covenant. And here we get this language about the covenant. Elsewhere we read those who forsake the holy covenant. And also we read the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter, again peaceably, even into the richest places of the province. And he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. He shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, but only for a time. And now this war between the king of the north and the king of the south. But we see this detail here, reference to taxes being imposed on the glorious kingdom. The glorious kingdom is Jerusalem. It's Israel. Yes? There's something more to these prophecies, which is why I'm sharing this with you today. I'm reviewing, revisiting, and taking a fresh look at what's been written here. I think it's important that we regularly do this. Now, did you know there was such a thing Let me show you the 4 caliphs. Abu Bakr was one. Abu Bakr was a senior companion and the father-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad of Islam. He ruled over the Rashidun Caliphate. He was the first caliph. The second was this dude here. Umar. He was the second caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate. There was 4 of them. The earliest, or the rightly guided caliphs. Uthman, where the word Ottoman, the Ottomans came from, was the third. When Abu Bakr was selected as a caliph, Uthman was the first person after Umar to offer his allegiance. He was succeeded by him. And then Ali, the 4th one, he ruled as the 4th rightly guided caliph until he was assassinated. And a lot of the fights between the Sunnis and the Shiites stem from this time in Islamic history. There was a pact. Let me find it for you. This is amazing. So much information. Where to begin? Under the caliphs, they had this rule called Dhimmi, right? I've spoken about this before. Under the Islamic Caliphate, they imposed taxes, especially on the people of the book. The book, what book? The Bible. The Jews and the Christians. They impose a different set of laws, regulations, and a different set of taxes. Sorry for shaking the camera. The camera that I have on here is attached to the table, so every time I move it, that moves too. What does it mean? The actual word Dhimmi means the people of the covenant. The people of the covenant, right, or muwahid, is a historical term for non-Muslims living in an Islamic state with legal protection. What am I saying? I'm saying that during the time of the Islamic conquests of the Middle East, North Africa, Arabia, Jerusalem, there was this system in place. And the people who agreed to it, the people who submitted and agreed to this covenant were called Dhimmi. They were the people of the covenant. Does Daniel allude to this people of the covenant, friends? What do you think? The word literally means protected person, referring to the state's obligation under Sharia. Sharia law is Islamic law which changes times and seasons according to the lunar calendar, but according to the Islamic Advent. For example, instead of Sabbath, it would be Friday, their day of rest, their day of worship. Changing times and seasons, changing the law. This is Islamic law, Sharia. The word literally means protected person, referring to the state's obligation under Sharia to protect the individual's life, property, as well as the freedom of religion, in exchange for loyalty to the state and payment of the jizya tax, in contrast to the zakat or obligatory alms paid by the Muslim subjects. It's a kingdom. This is another form of a kingdom under the Khilafah, right? Dhimmi were exempt from certain duties assigned specifically to Muslims, but were otherwise equal under the laws of property, contract, and obligation, under this law of Dhimmi. Numerous restrictions reinforced the second-class status of Dhimmi communities and forced them into ghettos. For instance, they must distinguish themselves from the Muslim neighbors by their dress code. They were not permitted to build new churches or synagogues, but only to repair old ones. And this is why many of these Islamic nations today still adhere to this rule. They still adhere to it, which also explains why they want to liberate al-Quds from the river to the sea. Why? They want to revert back to the time of the seventh mountain, the seventh head, which was Islam, that came after Rome. A Muslim man may marry a Jewish or Christian Dhimmi woman who may keep her own religion, but a Muslim woman cannot marry a Dhimmi man unless he converts to Islam. Dhimmis are prohibited from converting Muslims under severe penalties, while Muslims are encouraged to convert Dhimmis. The Pact of Omar, issued by the second Islamic Caliph, imposed a long list of humiliating conditions on Dhimmis. Since the time of the Islamic conquests over that region, friends, especially we're talking about Jerusalem, that is at the heart of Bible prophecy. I'm concerned with that particular location. Since the time of Islam's invasion of Jerusalem, according to the Muslim mindset, in the Muslim world, Jerusalem, according to Islam, is still legally under the Dhimmi status. Once it was conquered, it will forever belong to Islam. This is how the mindset is. This is why it's an obligation for Muslims to further advance the reformation of the Khilafah. It's an obligation. It's a central, pivotal part of their end-time narrative to liberate Jerusalem. Daniel spoke about this one who would impose taxes on the glorious kingdom. Another person arising who comes in peacefully. What is Islam today? It's a Trojan horse that sneaks in by stealth, when in fact it's a dragon. Islam means peace, didn't you know? The religion of peace, right? They made peace in that region through war, through subjugation, through domination. That is how they brought peace, utopia, Islamic utopia in the region. Jizya. The tax system. Jizya is a per capita yearly taxation historically levied in the form of financial charge on permanent non-Muslim subjects, Dhimmi, of a state governed by Islamic law. Muslim jurists required adult, free, sane males among the Dhimmi community to pay the jizya, while exempting women, children, elders, handicapped, the ill, the insane, monks, hermits, slaves, and Muslims, non-Muslim foreigners, who only temporarily reside in Muslim lands. Dhimmis who chose to join military service were also exempted from payment. Many apostatized and joined the Khilafah, joined military service, as were those who could not afford to pay. According to Islamic law, elders handicapped must be given pensions and they must not go into begging. So this is the kingdom of Islam. This is how it was governed, how it was ruled. They had a system of governance in place, and that was the Sharia law. So in their mindset, when the end of the Ottoman Empire came, which is almost 100 years ago, the longing, the desire to rekindle it has not disappeared. Hence, the Muslim Brotherhood's formation. The Muslim Brotherhood are the political Islamist organization that are seeking to implement what I'm reading to you today once they reconquer Jerusalem, in a nutshell. World History website has this paper written to explain some more about this. Dhimma is the term used in Islamic law for the covenant of protection. There's that word again. This was an agreement, this was a covenant. And for some reason, I'm thinking having to review the book of Daniel to understand what actually happened. Because we know from the prophecies that we've been reading, friends, the bear, the lion, the leopard, the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron are all showing us the region of the Middle East is the region of the Antichrist beast kingdom. But because prophecy is panoramic, what other information have we missed? So let's continue to read some more of this. In Islamic law of the covenant of protection, also called Aman, that exists between the Islamic State and the tolerated members of the Quranically recognized non-Muslim religious communities, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians and Sabines, who live permanently within its boundaries. The medieval Arab lexicographers explained the word as being derived from the root for blame, meaning that to violate the covenant was blameworthy. The proteges under this covenant were designated individually as Dhimmis and collectively as al-Dhimma, people of the covenant. Although the specifics of Dhimma came to be elaborated over the centuries, its essence goes back to two legal precedents, a Quranic verse and the theoretical treaty of surrender between the Christian communities of Syria, Palestine and the Muslim armies. It's basically the treaty of surrender, friends. The conquering peoples surrendered to the Muslim armies. Islam was spread just as the Bible described it. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful, terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them. before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. Something else that I found. This is written by a sheikh from Qatar in 2019. Whoever harms a dhimmi shall be his foe on the day of judgment. An investigation into an authentic prophetic tradition and its origins from the covenants. This is something I'm going to be researching in more depth over the next weeks and months, friends. I'm going to be looking into this whole thing a lot closely and re-examining the prophetic scriptures so we can really narrow this thing down with more accuracy. The hadith, whoever harms a dhimmi shall be his foe in the day of judgment, can be found as an end clause to covenants which the Prophet issued to Christian, Jewish and Magian communities. It is highly unlikely for different non-Muslim communities to have forged this prophetic statement at the end of their respective documents. This paper argues that this utterance is authentic and can be confidently traced back to the Prophet. This paper examines the occurrence of this statement as a hadith in the Islamic literature and notes how it was dismissed by scholars of tradition who only accepted one of its variants. The paper then compares the rights granted to non-Muslims in the covenants to those conveyed in a number of hadith and notes the discrepancies between early Islam's official documents and the legal injunctions found in Muslim tradition. When I think about the daily sacrifices and how the Antichrist, this man of sin, will stand in the holy place or bring in there the abomination that causes desolation, that is also regarding the end time. Although in history past, similarities have happened before. But there is coming this time that we haven't seen yet, where history is going to repeat itself. But what community, what religious community fits the bill? What particular outfit today completely fulfills and fits the prophetic narrative, friends, and it's Islam? We need to pay closer attention. Let's scroll down and see what is he talking about. There's so much in these papers, these documents that I found that we'll have to go back and forth in them in other future videos. But this is just like, I guess, an introduction to us having a look at the Caliphates and what they were like in the time of their influence, specifically in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, the authenticity of the Constitution of Medina reveals how the Prophet began writing political decrees early on, and that this practice was continued by his companions after his death. In an attempt to shed light on the nature of these official decrees and the motivation behind them, this paper adopts an intertextual examination. Right, so he's going to really break it down and have a look. He talks about this covenant. In fact, there is such a thing called, ever since the publication of John Andrew Morrow's book, The Covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the World, there has been renewed interest in these documents. I'm not surprised. I think I had that brought up somewhere. One moment. This was one of them. This was one of them. The Astinam of Muhammad, also known as the Covenant or Testament of Muhammad, is a document which is a charter or writ written by Ali, the fourth caliph, right? and ratified by Muhammad, granting protection and other privileges to the followers of Jesus the Nazarene, given to the Christian monks of St. Catherine's Monastery. Remember, it was a protection tax. If you submitted and agreed to being under domination by the Muslim armies, you were required to pay protection tax. If you refused, you would have expected to be martyred. What choice given did they have out of the two? Some chose to be subservient, to live humbly in a subdued position, while others chose to refuse it. It is sealed with an imprint representing Muhammad's hand, which is apparently this document over here. Is this making sense to you, friends? I don't blame you if it doesn't. Ashtiname is a Persian word meaning book of peace. Book of peace, a Persian term for a treaty and covenant. I'm sorry, but reading these things, I'm like, I need to go back and read the book of Daniel. What? Because us in the West, Bible prophecy land, we're so unfamiliar with all of this, even as ex-Muslim. To a degree, I heard about the caliphs, the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic expeditions, Al-Quds, but actually paying like closer attention to what were the details, especially this time. This is all new. How much more is the Lord going to reveal? I wonder. I wonder how many of us in the West in Bible prophecy have even considered this. Ashtiname is a Persian word meaning book of peace, a Persian term for a treaty and covenant. So what treaty, what peace treaty was already in place, friends? This is the one. I'm thinking this is it. Remember when I said about panoramic? This is panoramic. But this image is the image of the Antichrist. But we're talking about kingdoms in history past that are somehow going to be a part of the future Antichrist beast kingdom. How are we doing? 43 minutes. This is a letter which was issued by Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that's his full name, the Prophet of Islam, who is sent to all the people as a trust on the part of God to all his creatures, that they may have no plea against God hereafter. Verily God, the wise, this letter is directed to the embracers of Islam as a covenant given to the followers, friends. I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. Interesting. Food for thought, if anything. So this whole covenant was introduced to those who believed in Jesus and to the people in Jerusalem. That's what I'm focusing on. So this is the English. Let me remind you what I'm reading. English translation of that document. So Muhammad was sent to all the people as a trust on the part of God, saying, this letter is directed to the embracers of Islam as a covenant given to the followers of Jesus the Nazarene in the east and west, the far and near. Does that remind you of something similar that Osama bin Laden did? They all do it. Even what's his name from Iran, Ahmadinejad, he did the same thing. But we think they're crazy. What are they talking about? Embrace Islam? They give you that warning, this peaceful, by peace, invitation to embrace Islam. But if you refuse and if you reject, then you become the enemy. This is why the West is the enemy. Israel is the enemy. All the world that has not submitted to the invitation of Islam is the enemy. This letter contains the oath given to them, and he who disobeys that which is therein will be considered a disbeliever. What did I tell you? A disbeliever and a transgressor to that whereunto he is commanded. He will be regarded as one who has corrupted the oath of God, disbelieved his testament, rejected his authority, despised his religion, and made himself deserving of his curse, which is why those of us who leave Islam, we believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, we are treated as such. That would make a lot of sense. It's ingrained within them, you guys. It's only the moderate, the liberal Muslims who would think otherwise, who would actually treat us as they would with their other neighbour, or just give us that equal respect. However, this is deeply ingrained within them. This is what Islam does when it conquers a people. And if you refuse the enlightenment of Islam, you are the enemy. This is why the West needs to wake up and reconsider what on earth they are doing when they're letting in thousands, probably millions, of radicals into their borders. And made himself deserving of his curse, whether he is a sultan or any other believer of Islam. Whenever Christian monks, devotees and pilgrims gather together, whether in a mountain or valley or den or frequented place or plain or church, or in houses of worship, verily we are at the back of them and shall protect them and their properties and their morals, by myself and my friends and by my assistants, for they are my subjects and under my protection. I shall exempt them from that which may disturb them, all the burdens which are paid by others, as an oath of allegiance. These are all flavors of the beast. In the future, the false prophet will have the image formed, breath will be given to this image, and he will enforce the worship of the image, which is really giving allegiance to the dragon and to the beast. And that's when those who give allegiance say, who is able to make war with the beast? They must not give anything of their income, but that which pleases them. They must not be offended or disturbed, blah, blah, blah. Their judges should not be changed or prevented from accomplishing their offices. It goes on. So apparently this was the invitation. So apparently Muhammad wrote this. Apparently, no one is allowed to plunder these Christians or destroy or spoil any of their churches or houses of worship, or take any of the things contained within these houses and bring it to the houses of Islam. And he who takes away anything thereof will be one who has corrupted the oath of God and disobeyed the messenger. Jizya should not be put upon their judges, monks, and those whose occupation is the worship of God, nor is any other thing to be taken from them, whether it be a fine or tax. Verily I shall keep their compact, whether they may be in the sea or on the land, in the east or west, in the north or south, for they are under my protection and the testament of my safety. Because he's going to get a lot of taxes from these people. He wants them to make money so they can pay him the taxes. So this is an ongoing thriving profitability in the economy of Islam. there's more to this. I've got some more things I want to share with you. It's very long. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving the camera again. Oh. Even so far as owning land, everything was controlled. Everything. Here we go. Let me enlarge this one moment. This is an Islamic paper written here. The covenants of Muhammad continue to cause controversy. This was written by John Andrew Morrow, who I just mentioned earlier, in 2019. He was the one who was being closely scrutinized for his written work because he reviewed it. Mubashir published a book review of the covenants of Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the world. For this I am grateful, as it helps stimulate research, debate, and discussion on these interesting documents. A source is a source is a source. Hussein alleges that the 6 covenants studied in my work are surprisingly not recorded in the classical Islamic sources such as the Quran, Hadith collections, Seerah writing, books of Islamic history, manuals of Islamic law. 4 of them have no mention at all in Islamic sources. However, 2 of them have a couple of indications which may lead one to trace some of their sentences back to Islamic sources. For that reason, the authenticity of these covenants has been questioned by both Muslim and Western scholars. As far as Muslims are concerned, the Quran is the revelation of God to Muhammad. It contains the word of God. It does not contain the word of Muhammad. Hence, why would one be surprised that the covenants of the Prophet are not recorded in the Quran? The Quran, however, does allude to the covenant or constitution of Medina numerous times, as confirmed in many commentaries. The Quran also contains key verses that corroborate the content of covenants of the Prophet with the Jews and the Christians. The Quran uses the word ahd and mithaq over 80 times. These terms for covenant can refer to the covenant between God and human souls in the world of shadows or particles, the covenant between God and Adam, the covenant between, and so forth, right? Let me scroll down. Speaking of the people of the book who resisted the Prophet, God says that shame is pitched over them like a tent wherever they are found, except when under a covenant of protection from God, which is why these people became the people of the covenant. Ibn Kathir explains that this covenant from God refers to the Dhimmi or covenant of protection from Allah, while the covenant from men refers to pledges and protections and so forth. Speaking of pagans, Allah asks, how can there be such a league, seeing that if they get an advantage over you, they respect not in you the ties of either kinship or of covenant? According to Ibn Kathir, this verse affirms that the idolaters do not deserve to enjoy a covenant of peace. There's something about all of this covenant stuff, the Dhimmi, the subjugation of the peoples that took place in Islamic now Middle East, which was once Christian, that the Bible is showing us. What we need to do is go back to the drawing board and re-examine, pay close attention to what was written there. Even though we are aware that the region of the Antichrist is covering the Middle East, We're aware of that right now. We understand that it's all Islamic, friends. That's what it's talking about. Relying on the authority of Ali, look at these names. He asserts that Dhimma means covenant. Unlike the people of the book, this verse asserts that the polytheists were unworthy of receiving covenants of protection due to their dishonesty, disloyalty, and treachery. Consequently, this verse alludes to the pledges, promises, treaties, and covenants that Muhammad concluded with the people of the book, who became the people of the covenant. They have a whole system in place, a whole system of Khilafah. When we think about how everything they have planned for the end times is in direct opposition, no, I don't need that, is in direct opposition to what the Bible says, it's actually quite sinister. Alislam.org talks also about the soldiers of the Mahdi. Why are they talking about such things, friends? What on earth are they even interested in conquering a region that apparently was already conquered because of Jerusalem? Jerusalem is at the heart of Islamic end times, and it's at the heart of Bible-believing Christians' Bible. There's so many different things to discuss. The forces of Mahdi will be composed of various nationalities, and at the time of uprising, they will be called through unique means. The individuals who have been designated before as commanders will assume the responsibility of guiding the soldiers and planning war operations, because they're going to revert back to the Khilafah. The end times in Islam is all about the Khilafah, re-establishing the rule of Allah, and they must reclaim Jerusalem. The soldiers to be accepted in the army of Mahdi under special circumstances have peculiar characteristics of their own. Some will be present in the primary staff and some will join the army. A group has been called the Security Guard Corps. In this chapter, we will take a look at the hadith related to this topic. In the hadith, we can read the names of the individuals that have been associated with particular military operations and the command of a number of soldiers. Military, ideological, political, spiritual. That is describing the Antichrist beast. When I showed you the video, friends, on the 10 kings and that organization, economic corporation, those 10 Islamic nations already in that nation, friends, I believe that is just going to evolve until they do announce it. Until the time comes when they announce it, and it will be strictly and purely Islamic. The commander of the faithful said in a sermon, "Then the Mahdi will appoint Isa, the Islamic Jesus, as his representative in the offensive operations against Ad-Dajjal, the Antichrist." The Islamic version of Antichrist is a Jew. Isa was set out to capture and suppress Ad-Dajjal. What does the Bible tell us in the book of Revelation? That the beast and the 10 kings make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them because he's Lord of Lords, right? Islam has a system in place that is expecting this false Jesus, who gives allegiance to their version of a Messiah, who is the Mahdi, to make war against this one individual called Dajjal. Dajjal, who would then be controlling the entire world, destroying agriculture and human generation, will call the people toward him, and anyone who accepts him will be treated with favor, and anyone who refuses to accept him will be killed. He would travel throughout the world, with the exception of Mecca, Medina, and Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, and all the illegitimate children from both east and the west of the globe will rally around him. Dajjal will set out towards Hijaz. Isa will intercept him at the passage of Harsha. Isa will direct a horrible shout at him and strike him in a decisive blow. Dajjal will melt in a blazing fire, like lead melting in fire. So ridiculous. Table of contents continues to go on about the end time and how the army of the Mahdi is going to look and what it's actually going to do. It's very, very organized. The commander of the faithful said, Sufani and the bearers of the black banners will confront each other, while among the latter there will be a young man from the Bani Hashim of the plant palm, of whose left hand would be a black mole, and so forth. You got a system of people preparing to reconquer and to further the rule of Islam in that whole world, in that whole part of that world, friends. Because this is what they did in the first place. This is how they behaved. It can be understood from their deeds that a considerable number of the special soldiers in the army of Mahdi would be Iranians, and that they have been mentioned in various ways as such as the people of Ray, the people of Khurasan, the treasures of Taliban, the Gummis, the people of Persia. It's no surprise that Persia is also going to be aligned in the Gog and Magog armies. So they just consider Iran to jump in with the Khilafah. And in fact, they'll have their own designated responsibilities when the Mahdi comes. This is their famous black banners from Khorasan. The forces of black banners that will arise from Khorasan will come to Kufa. When Mahdi appears in Mecca, they will pay allegiance to him. These people are all mad, friends. They're mental. They literally believe that this is going to happen and they're on the winning side, not knowing that they are completely opposed to Jesus Christ. This whole Antichrist beast kingdom has a movement, has a system in place that is going to be prepared to fight the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is a part of their indoctrination. Friends, it's already been happening. It's happened in history past, and it's going to happen again. It's happened before. It was wounded, the Ottoman Empire, but that wound is going to be healed. It's going to come back. This particular era in history, the Rashidun, or the beginning phase of caliphs, the first four caliphs of the Islamic Empire after Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali are referred to as Rashidun. They were the rightly guided caliphs by mainstream Sunni Muslims. Their tenure started with the death of Muhammad. When he died, they took up the mantle and they continued to expand. They continued to expand. They continued to conquer, cause a lot of damage, and grow rich and wealthy while they were doing it, through the taxation, through the looting and the booty that they were winning over from their conquered peoples. During their reign, the armies of Islam united the Arabian Peninsula under the banner of their faith, and then conquered parts of the Byzantine Empire and the whole of the Sasanian Empire. These swift and permanent conquests were halted during the reign of the last of these Rashidun Caliphs, Ali, who spent most of his reign in civil war and whom Shia Muslims consider the only legitimate heir to Muhammad. The Rashidun Caliphs introduced an innovative administrative system, and although they failed to gain supreme authority, their system would be carried on and moulded to suit the needs of time by subsequent rulers up to 1924, the Ottoman Empire, when it ended. That was when it was ended. Looking at that map, describing where Islam had conquered and where it had spread, Jerusalem is at the heart of it. Reading on, now I've shown you all of that. Let's go back and read some Daniel chapter 11. And let us just read and see what the scriptures are speaking of. So much, can I just say, so much of Islamic history, as the common narrative has it, is in question. It's been put in question. For example, one example, Dan Gibson, the archaeologist, he says the inception of Islam began in Petra region, southern Jordan. Other researchers are saying it's possible that Islam began closer to the region of Iraq. And I think we're going to find out soon enough what is the real truth about the inception of Islam and why it spread over these regions, and how the Word of God is showing us, because the Word of God is accurate. The narrative of the biblical prophets is always accurate. We can read these other writings, these other papers, and give it some consideration. But we need to look at history to know what happened, to learn, and to see, is the Bible talking about that? Has it mentioned it to us before? Verse 20, there shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honour of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him, and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. And after the league is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, for he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. He shall enter peaceably even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done. He shall disperse among them plunder. This is all describing Islamic conquests. And he shall devise his plans against the strongholds. Why? Because Islam doesn't stop there. It continues to expand. It's not happy and content with where they are. They want to move and grow and take over. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south. And again, I think we also need to consider the wars between the Arabians and the Ottomans. That already happened in history past. Is this referring to the king of the north and the king of the south? Again, panoramic prophetic scriptures, past, present and future. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not be able to stand, for they shall devise plans against him. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant, and forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place the abomination of desolation. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many, yet for many days they shall fall by the sword, by flame, by captivity and plundering. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. And some of those of understanding shall fall, to refine them, purify them, make them white, until the time of the end. Because it is still for the appointed time. This is not yet the time of the end. It's been building up towards that particular time. Then the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god. He shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished. For what has been determined shall be done. He shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall exalt himself above them all. But in their place he shall honour a god of fortresses, and a god which his fathers did not know he shall honour with gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and divide the land for gain. One of the other caliphs, let me make this a little larger. The Pact of Umar is the body of limitations and privileges entered into by treaty. Often we talk about the peace treaty, Daniel chapter 9, and we automatically think Rome, the Vatican, the Pope. The Pact of Umar is the body of limitations and privileges entered into by treaty between conquering Muslims and conquered non-Muslims. We have no special treaty of this sort with the Jews, but we must assume that all conquered peoples, including the Jews, had to subscribe to it. Why? Because they wanted mostly the Jews to be dead. Thus, the laws cited below and directed against churches apply to synagogues too. The pact was probably originated about 637 by Umar I after the conquest of Christian Syria and Palestine. By accretions from established practices and precedents, the pact was extended, yet despite these additions, the whole pact was ascribed to Umar. There are many variants of the text, and scholars deny that the text as it now stands could have come from the pen of Umar I. It is generally assumed that its present form dates from about the 9th century. The Pact of Ummah has served to govern the relations between the Muslims and the people of the book such as Jews, Christians, and the like, down to the present day. In addition to the conditions of the pact listed below, the Jews, like the Christians, paid a head tax in return for protection and for exemption from military service. Jews and Christians were also forbidden to hold government office. This pact, like such medieval legislation, was honoured more in the breach than in the observance. In general, though, the pact increased in stringency with the centuries and was still in force in the 20th century in lands such as Yemen. The pact is in Arabic, and here is the pact. I'll go through the pact with you, friends, and then I'm going to end the stream to avoid it being a longer stream, because there's a lot of information here that we need to consider. And I would like and encourage you to watch this one more time and to check it out. Honestly, we need to rethink what we've been taught, re-examine, and just reevaluate. This is a writing to Umar from the Christians of such and such a city. When you, Muslims, marched against us Christians, we asked of you protection for ourselves, our posterity, our possessions, and our co-religionists, and we made this stipulation with you that we will not erect in our city or the suburbs any new monastery, church, cell, or hermitage, that we will not repair any of such buildings that may fall into ruins, or renew those that may be situated in the Muslim quarters of the town, that we will not refuse the Muslims entry into our churches, either by night or by day, that we will not open the gates wide to passengers and travellers, that we will receive any Muslim traveller into our houses and give him food and lodging for 3 nights, because the Muslims were their overlords, right? So they agreed and gave them the pact as a signature. We agree that we will not harbour any spy in our churches or houses, or conceal any enemy of the Muslims. At least 6 of these laws were taken over from earlier Christian laws against infidels. That we will not teach our children the Quran. Some nationalist Arabs feared that infidels would ridicule the Quran. Others did not want infidels even to learn the language. That we will not make a show of the Christian religion or invite anyone to embrace it. That we will not prevent any of our kinsmen from embracing Islam if they so desire. That we will honour the Muslims and rise up in our assemblies when they wish to take their seats. That we will not imitate them in our dress, either in the cap, turban, sandals, or parting of the hair. That we will not make use of the expressions of speech, nor adopt their surnames. Infidels must not use greetings and special phrases employed only by Muslims when they talk about apartheid state. That we will not ride on saddles or gird on swords or take ourselves arms or wear them or engrave Arabic inscriptions on our rings. That we will not sell wine, which was forbidden to Muslims. That we will shave the front of our heads. That we will keep our own style of dress wherever we may be. That we will wear girdles around our waists. Infidels wore leather or cord girdles, Muslims cloth and silk. That we will not display the cross upon our churches or display our crosses on our sacred books in the streets of the Muslims or in their marketplaces. Do you recognize what ISIS did? Demolishing relics, Christian artifacts, churches, synagogues, the crosses. This is because it's all they know. This is all the Islamic mindset, the invading Islamic armies. This is all they know. It's humiliating, degrading, that the people who submitted, the people of the covenant who submitted to the subjection coming under the Dhimmi status, the jizya tax, that they would confess such things. That we will not recite our services in a loud voice when a Muslim is present, that we will not carry palm branches in our images or our images in procession in the streets, that at the burial of our dead we will not chant loudly or carry lighted candles in the streets of the Muslims, and so forth. All this we promise to observe on behalf of ourselves and our co-religionists, and receive protection from you in exchange. And if we violate any of the conditions of this agreement, then we forfeit your protection, and you are at liberty to treat us as enemies and rebels. I'm going to save this for another time. This one has some information in there that I need to share with you also. It was in 1988, Journal of Islamic Jerusalem Studies, and some interesting information in here. Again, we're focusing on Bible prophecy. And if this little horn is arising out from the Islamic world, there's themes, certain characteristics that he will do that the others prior to him have done before. If we're talking about the Ottoman Empire being the one, where is it? Being the one of the 7 heads that was wounded and that is coming back again, but this time including Babylon, including Medo-Persia, including Greece, then there are some things that they've done in the past that this one is going to do again. Covenants have been in place. Muslims invading Muslim armies introduced covenant, protection covenant, to the people of the covenant. Something to seriously consider and to reconsider, don't you think? I'll be back again soon, friends. It's a lot of information for myself to even grasp, because I feel that there's something in this that we've missed. But I'm going to be researching it some more. I'm going to look at all the various caliphs and to find out what is the situation with Turkey right now, and who is this little horn that's going to arise after having subdued 3 out of the 10. History is going to repeat itself. So if we can familiarize ourselves with what happened in Islamic history, we're going to know. We're going to see it happen, friends. I'll be back again soon. What day is it today? Today is Wednesday, I believe. I pray that I'll be able to prepare the other message that I've got planned to present, which is the Greater Israel Project, by Saturday. I hope I can do that. Thank you for being here. Please share this message if you thought it was useful, informative, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it.